we got a lot of questions for your panel, and we kind of amalgamated them into one core thing. Folks have started to lose faith in our institutions and in our elected processes, and especially because of climate change, because they haven't seen what's being done to move it forward, and it's such an existential issue. Briefly, how would you say that either yourselves or your organization, your institutions, how are we rekindling that belief in the systems and bringing in more participation into the democratic process?
You know, where I would start with is just a bit of framing about my experience. I am a neophyte politician. I spent most of my working life advocating for workers, mostly healthcare workers, negotiating collective agreement, safety issues. In 2018, I led a round of bargaining for the Facilities Bargaining Association that reestablished a provincial occupational health and safety agency for healthcare workers, which has one of the highest injury rates of all occupations in the province. And that was after that a pre-existing entity such as that had been eliminated in the mid 2000s. And you know, everything really that I have learned about the need to organize and advocate really comes from my experience working with working people. And so it was a very different experience for me to be, you know, to make a decision in the context of the COVID pandemic and in the context of really wanting to participate in a process where we can build back better, having seen directly the impact on working people of COVID and of, you know, vulnerable people, seniors, et cetera. And so I made that decision to run, and then found myself as the Minister of Education, which was in the midst of a pandemic, which was very challenging. And I, you know, for me, the issue about how we run our government, I think government is just about how we work together to do the best things we need to do for our communities. For me, it isn't really anything more than that. You know, the legislature or any kind of political office is not, for me, a destination. It is a tool that we use to advance conditions for people. And there are very many structures that exist in all of the different, whatever level of government you're at, whatever organization you're at, that can either, you know, impede or facilitate our ability to do that work. And, you know, one of the things that I learned in the labor movement is that, and just by being in organizations, is that, you know, culture eats strategy for breakfast every single day, no matter where you are, no matter what the work that you're trying to do. And I think it's incumbent on us to be able to, as elected leaders, to be able to do everything we can to cut through all of that. And I will just say that it's hard to do that. It is hard to do that. But that's what we have to do. We have to push the boulders uphill every day to try and make the gains that we know we need to make. Understanding that it is going to be very challenging for us to be able to make as much progress as we want to make in a given time period. And that is, you know, sort of the difference for me in terms of where I've worked in the past and where I'm working now. Change is slow, and it is slower than we need it to be. It is slower than kids tell us that it needs to be, absolutely. And so the first thing is that we have to be relentless. We have to be connected. We have to be prepared to come out and talk to people about hard issues when people don't think we're necessarily doing the right thing or all of the right things. And I'm grateful that there are people in my community who will still come and talk to me every few months. Jennifer, what are you doing about this? Have you made progress on this? When is our next meeting going to be to talk about this? And I feel like sometimes, oh my gosh, I don't have enough to report back because not enough has happened on this issue. But I still want to have those conversations, and I still want to engage, because that's the only way we're actually going to make progress. So I think that politics, and I think being in this is about a relationship with people where we're all trying to work together, and we've got people doing a particular role at a particular time to try to help move things along. And it is that trust and that relationship in rooms like this that is how we are going to, that is how we have a chance of trying to redeem trust that our institutions can actually work for people.
Thank you. It's such a good question. I'm going to try to stick to three key points as answers. The first is that we need to tell the truth about the scale of the crisis and the responses required. So I think about how many years in which we were talking about the massive climate crisis and then presenting sort of small personal lifestyle change purchasing solutions as the answer. And people are smart, right? There's cognitive dissonance in being told that the problem is this big and you can solve it by buying recycled toilet paper. The solutions we were presenting didn't align with the crisis, and it fuels people's disillusionment about leadership, I think. So that's one, is that we need to tell the truth. The second, I would say, is that we need to stop letting those who are the problem tell us what the solutions are. So I think about, the federal government saying we need to build a pipeline, that's how we're going to fund climate action. Give me a break is my nicest response to that. But it's also true in terms of the amount of industry lobbying that happens, and I can tell you from a local government perspective, for example, Fortis lobbies local governments hard to make sure that we aren't taking action to get gas out of our buildings, and that's a problem. Because we absolutely need to get gas out of our buildings if we're going to address the 50% of our climate emissions that come from burning fracked gas. So it is a problem when we let our solutions be so heavily influenced by folks who are profiting from those solutions not working. And then the third piece I'll say is that we need to be tackling climate in a way that addresses affordability as well and safety as well. And the best solutions we have do that, actually. It shouldn't be that challenging. And I was delighted to see the electric bike rebate that the province announced recently, and delighted to see that it was massively oversubscribed immediately, because we need more electric bicycles, we need more public transportation, and again, the significant investments that we've seen in public transportation provincially is huge for us as local governments. We need to get off of our reliance on individual private gas vehicles, and all of these things are key solutions, and they get at the heart of making our communities healthier and safer and lifting up those who are struggling the most. So we need more of those types of solutions as well.
I feel almost left out that Fortis doesn't lobby me, but I think they know I'm a lost cause. But I guess I would say two things. So I think a lot about representation because of who I am. And I think we have to be able to differentiate between descriptive representation and substantive representation. So as a queer woman of color who's a renter, I hold unique identities on my council. But if I don't stand up for people who are people of color, if I don't stand up for renters, if I don't stand up for queer people, then what is the point of me sitting there and taking up that seat? And too often we look to racialized communities, we look to different types of leaders, women, let's say, who don't stand up for women, who don't stand up for the communities, and I think that definitely erodes faith in government. So I think we have to have better language to talk about this. I don't vote for people. I'm a strong supporter of women running in government. I don't vote for people just because they're women. I vote for them because they're going to stand up for women and other gender minorities. So again, I think representation really matters, but good representation. And I think the other thing is looking at voter turnout at the local government level. It's about half what it is at the federal level. It's about 30% who elect me and Christine. And if we directly overlay who votes, it's the richest neighborhoods, which often tend to be very established neighborhoods. They tend to be very white. So I think we have to look at who's voting and why they're voting. And then so why do local governments make the decisions that they do? It's because of who elects them, who's going to show up. So we need to be able to increase voter turnout. But I think it all comes back to public engagement. We need to have translated materials. We need to have culturally appropriate events, culturally appropriate food at events. We need to reach out to young people in ways. I was at an event last night where they did a climate event on a basketball court. That is the type of public engagement that I want to see. I don't necessarily want to see come into City Hall and tell us what you think. That is not accessible to everybody. So I think really good public engagement matters. And I think that helps restore faith in government when they say, this is what you told us, this is what we heard, this is what we did, here's what our decision-making framework were. We can't always make the decisions that people want, but we should be able to explain why that is. So I think, again, representation and public engagement will help. But if anyone else has answers, I'd love to hear them too.
Great answers. I've been trying to figure out the answer to the question about how do we get over people's loss of faith in government and institutions for several decades, and I'm not sure I'm any closer to an answer, but I think Jennifer's comment about honesty is very important. Accountability is very important, and that includes having legislated accountability in specific areas. And not being afraid to report that you haven't been as successful as you wanted to be, and then say what you're going to do about it. Before the pandemic, I knocked on a lot of doors, and except in 2020 during the election where I talked to people by phone, really hadn't done any door knocking, both because of the pandemic and because of my own slowness in overcoming my concerns about being face to face with a lot of people. I went door knocking yesterday, and I remembered how great it was to actually just go up to people and say, "What are you thinking about? What do you care about? What do you need us to do?" And listening. If they ask a question, answer it, but listen. I think that's one of the most important things that people in public life and elected office can do and should do. Continue to do. And finally, door knocking isn't the only way to do it. One of my personal commitments to myself is if I get an invitation to speak to a group like this, accept it. Particularly if it's a group of young people, particularly if it's a university group, particularly if it's school kids. I've told my staff, never say no.
Thank you so much. And I don't know logistically how this would work, but if I could vote for all of you to continue these, I would. So thank you so much, everyone. Guys, honestly, thank you for being here. Everyone, a round of applause for the people who are sacrificing their time, their energy to work through the system to make real change. Thank you so much, George. Thank you very much.